And now to a story that is all new at 5:30. No one investigates like News 4. Back in November, we began digging deeper into an audit that revealed the Erie County Sheriff spent hundreds of thousands of dollars without any oversight. The Sheriff's office used the money in question to buy new Chevy Tahoes, office furniture, and a computer system. The Sheriff says he did nothing wrong. But News 4's Ed Dranch has uncovered some new legislation that would regulate these funds. Ed?
Jackie, I've been working on this investigation, as you said, for nearly 3 months now, since we learned of the Sheriff's Office audit. The Sheriff has about $1 million to use at his own discretion, but through my investigation, I've learned that's all about to change. Former Erie County Comptroller David Shenk calls it
is the closest thing to a legalized slush fund that there is.
About $1 million made in part from inmates at the Erie County Holding Center. It's used at Sheriff Tim Howard's discretion.
Profits from the inmates that are used to not burden the taxpayer with a similar expense.
The money comes from the telephone fund, a bank account exclusively for money made from prisoners making phone calls. According to this recent audit done by the Erie County Comptroller's office, the fund is worth more than $700,000. The Sheriff's office receives a 47% commission on inmate calls as part of a contract with Public Communication Services, with a minimum annual guarantee of $500,000. It's a sum of money that only the sheriff has access to, much to the distress of Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars.
We saw this starting last year when there were purchases that were made by the sheriff's office that we weren't really too keen on.
Last year, according to the audit, $490,000 from this fund was spent on prisoner transport vehicles. $270,000 was spent on 6 Chevy Tahoes used by 3 sheriff's deputies as patrol vehicles and at least 2 dog handlers. $140,000 was spent on office furniture, spent on more than 200 items, including at least 2 $600 filing cabinets and 100 chairs. Only $50,000, however, was spent on inmate programs. Did you use these funds improperly?
No.
According to this audit response from the sheriff, new patrol vehicles were a necessity, as the current fleet was unsafe and in bad condition, some with more than 200,000 miles. As for the furniture, the sheriff was planning to move his administrative offices elsewhere as part of an agreement under the Collins administration. So Howard purchased new furniture rather than moving the outdated furniture he already had. But Polenkars called that a paper move only, suggesting that move would never happen. The sheriff in this response said it was too late to return the furniture.
If the sheriff wanted to buy an aircraft, he could buy an aircraft.
Legally, the sheriff can use the money however he wants. There's simply no guideline as to how it should be spent. And Howard says there's not enough money in his general fund budget to spend on things he needs, so he was using the unregulated telephone fund as his plan B.
Well, the sheriff for many years has been saying there's not enough money to spend. I think every department head agrees that they wish they had more money to spend, but you got to spend within the allotment that you receive.
Now, Polenkars is calling for more transparency. He told News 4 the sheriff has agreed to hand the money over to Erie County, so legislators are aware of how it's being spent, even though there are no specific guidelines for what it should be spent on. I guess my question is, why would they reject that proposal if there's no real regulation as to how he can spend the money from that telephone fund?
That's a decision of the legislature. They may say it's inappropriate. It's another oversight level.
On top of the agreement already reached between the Erie County Executive and the Sheriff, a resolution is now working its way through the county legislature that would mandate how the money is actually spent. $1 million in just kind of uncontrolled money, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Legislators Tim Hogues and Betty Jean Grant are putting forth that resolution that would direct the sheriff to spend 40% of that money on inmate rehabilitation and educational programs, while 60% would be spent on other purposes approved by the county legislature.
When you focus on safety and well-being and treating individuals properly, then you take it from the other side of not having so many lawsuits and issues going on in the facilities. And so there needs to be that focus.
Through an official request, News 4 obtained this letter sent to the former Comptroller, David Shenk, from Thomas Beeline, chairman of the State Commission of Correction. In the letter, he writes, the commission does not contemplate statewide regulatory changes at this time. Rather, enactment of a local law or resolution is the only way things will change.
That if the sheriff wants to spend any money from it, he needs to receive legislative approval to do so.
Polencars notes the sheriff did nothing wrong in spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on replacement office furniture and a replacement fleet. Instead, he says the days of making unregulated purchases are over. When it comes to that resolution I mentioned, it was tabled at a public safety committee meeting this morning, meaning it's still being discussed. I've asked the current Comptroller, Republican Stefan Mihailo, to comment on the audit several times. My requests still have not been answered. You can see the full audit for yourself, along with a breakdown of what furniture the sheriff bought online at WIVB.com. Reporting live, Edge Ranch, News 4 at 5:30.